In a world dominated by the constant flow of digital narratives and instant public judgment, the intersection of high society, elite sports, and personal values often creates a perfect storm of public scrutiny. When prominent figures step out of their expected boundaries, the collective gaze of the internet intensifies, waiting to dissect every movement, every affiliation, and every choice. It is a reality that tech magnates, global icons, and modern internet royalty know all too well. For years, the digital public square has acted as both a launchpad for incredible influence and a ruthless courtroom where reputations are tested in real time. This dynamic becomes particularly charged when the individuals involved have previously taken very public, highly principled stands on societal issues, establishing a baseline of expectations that their audience firmly expects them to uphold. When an unexpected choice shatters that perceived alignment, the resulting ripple effect can transform a quiet weekend gathering into a national conversation, leaving audiences caught completely off guard and hungry for answers. The culture of modern celebrity demands absolute consistency, and any perceived deviation is immediately met with a mixture of confusion, shock, and profound disappointment from followers who believed they knew exactly where their public figures stood. To truly understand how these storms gather, one must look at the fragile nature of online reputations and the unspoken contracts established between internet pioneers and their communities. Over the past 2 decades, the rise of major social media and content networks has elevated a new class of leaders. Individuals who are judged not just by their financial portfolios, but by their perceived ethics and the cultural spaces they choose to inhabit. These digital spaces, which began as small experiments in human connection, have grown into massive global ecosystems where corporate moves and personal values are constantly weighed against each other. When a leader from this world steps into an entirely different arena, one known for raw intensity, unpredictable behavior, and a very different cultural footprint, a collision of worlds is almost inevitable. The tension builds quietly at first, fueled by stray photographs, social media tags, and first-hand accounts filtering out to a wider public that is eager to analyze the deeper meaning behind a single appearance. It is within this atmospheric tension that our current story unfolds, serving as a powerful reminder of how quickly a single event can ignite an intense wave of public backlash, forcing an influential figure to stand before the digital masses and account for his presence in a space that many felt he should have avoided entirely. As we dive deeper into this unraveling narrative, it becomes clear that the modern entertainment landscape has created unprecedented opportunities for these distinct worlds to overlap in ways that were once unimaginable. Major sporting spectacles, corporate leadership circles, and high-profile societal celebrations frequently bring together individuals from vastly different backgrounds, placing them under the same roof and within the same frame. For the viewers watching from a distance, these gatherings are rarely seen as neutral business opportunities or simple social visits. Instead, they are interpreted through a complex lens of symbolism and association, where simply standing in a room is viewed as a silent endorsement of everything that room represents. This is the delicate tightrope that modern public figures must walk every single day, knowing that their presence at a venue can speak much louder than any carefully worded statement or corporate press release. The anticipation builds as the public tries to reconcile the image of a progressive tech innovator with the reality of a gritty, high-stakes athletic showcase that attracted some of the most outspoken and controversial personalities of the modern era. Before we explore the specific details of the event that set social media ablaze and the intense public reactions that followed, we invite you to become a permanent part of our community. If you find value in these deep dives into the complex intersections of culture, celebrity responsibility, and public accountability, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel. By subscribing, you ensure that you never miss our detailed, comprehensive breakdowns of the stories shaping our cultural landscape, allowing you to stay informed and engaged with the most pressing conversations of our time. Your support helps us continue delivering balanced, thoroughly researched narratives that look beyond the surface headlines to reveal the true human dynamics at play. The setting for this unfolding drama was nothing short of historic, taking place against a backdrop that naturally commands global attention and amplifies any event held upon its grounds. It was an occasion designed to celebrate a major milestone in national history, drawing a highly eclectic crowd of power brokers, entertainment moguls, sports executives, and high-profile public figures. The sheer scale of the event ensured that hundreds of cameras were present, documenting every arrival and scanning the crowd for familiar faces. As the evening progressed and photographs began to circulate across major digital networks, users began to notice one particular attendee whose presence seemed to contradict years of public advocacy and personal history. This discovery immediately triggered a wave of real-time commentary, as internet sleuths and casual observers alike began questioning the motives behind this unexpected appearance, setting the stage for a massive public relations challenge that would require a direct and immediate response from the tech co-founder himself. The initial shockwaves that rippled through social media soon solidified into a focused and intense storm of criticism as the full reality of the situation became clear to the public. The event in question was the high-profile UFC Freedom 250 event, an incredibly prominent gathering held at the White House on June 14 to celebrate the upcoming 250th anniversary of the United States. For an evening dedicated to such a monumental milestone, the guest list was naturally bound to attract significant attention, but the specific breakdown of attendees is what ultimately ignited the controversy. The gathering drew a massive number of prominent conservative figures and individuals deeply aligned with the political movement of former President Donald Trump. Among the notable personalities commanding the room were professional wrestling executive Triple H, legendary podcast host and UFC commentator Joe Rogan, and highly controversial comedian Tony Hinchcliffe. Because the room was heavily populated by individuals known for their outspoken right-wing viewpoints, the broader public was caught completely off guard when they spotted Alexis Ohanian sitting among the crowd. For many observers, his presence felt like an absolute contradiction to everything he had publicly stood for over the last decade, sparking an immediate and passionate debate across multiple digital platforms. To understand why the public reaction was so intensely critical, one must look at the deep contrast between the cultural environment of that room and Alexis Ohanian's well-documented history of public advocacy. As a highly successful venture capitalist and the co-founder of Reddit, Ohanian had built a reputation as a progressive tech leader who was not afraid to take firm, principled stances on sensitive societal issues. He had been a vocal and public critic of Donald Trump's past policies, frequently using his platform to champion inclusivity, diversity, and systemic reform. Furthermore, as the husband of global tennis icon Serena Williams, Ohanian had earned widespread praise for his fierce, unwavering public defense of his wife against a barrage of racist and sexist attacks throughout her legendary career. Together, they were viewed by millions as a progressive power couple dedicated to fighting prejudice and fostering a safer, more equitable world. Seeing him willingly enter a space packed with figures who represented the exact opposite of those values left his followers feeling deeply confused, alienated, and increasingly angry as the images continued to spread across the internet. As news of his attendance rapidly circulated, the digital public square on X, formerly known as Twitter, erupted into a massive wave of collective disappointment. Users began dissecting the broader implications of his presence, with many pointing out that the event itself featured moments that directly insulted the very communities Ohanian claimed to protect. A major flashpoint occurred when UFC fighter Josh Hokit took to the microphone and delivered a series of disgraceful, highly offensive comments regarding former First Lady Michelle Obama. This vile rhetoric struck a deeply painful chord with onlookers, as it mirrored the exact type of cruel, targeted vitriol that Serena Williams and countless other black women have had to endure for decades. One disappointed observer on X expressed their deep frustration, writing that it was incredibly disheartening to see him there, especially given what was said by the end of the fight. They passionately urged Ohanian to cease associating with people who perpetuate such harmful rhetoric, emphasizing that his presence provided a veneer of legitimacy to a toxic environment. The criticism quickly grew more personal and direct as users highlighted Ohanian's unique responsibilities as a father and a husband to black women. Another prominent post on X directly tagged the tech entrepreneur, calling his attendance at the UFC White House event absolutely terrible. The user pointed out the painful irony of the situation, reminding Ohanian that he has black daughters and a black wife, and noting with absolute certainty that the disgusting comments directed at Michelle Obama could just as easily be directed toward his own family. The post concluded with a stern declaration of shame, reflecting a widespread sentiment that Ohanian had compromised his personal ethics for the sake of networking or entertainment. This sentiment quickly spilled over from X onto Ohanian's personal Instagram page, which was rapidly flooded by thousands of comments from longtime admirers who expressed a profound sense of betrayal. Many wrote about how incredibly let down they felt, explaining that they had always assumed Alexis was one of the genuine good guys in the tech industry who truly cared about human dignity over proximity to raw power, as the backlash mounted to a fever pitch and threatened to permanently damage his carefully cultivated reputation. Alexis Ohanian realized that silence was no longer an option. Taking to X, he addressed the mounting controversy directly in an attempt to clarify his motivations and salvage his standing with the public. He began his statement by addressing the most egregious moment of the night, explicitly writing that the fighter's slur about former First Lady Michelle Obama was entirely vile and completely inappropriate. By directly condemning the rhetoric, Ohanian hoped to show that his core values remained intact despite his presence in the room. He then sought to reframe the entire narrative around his attendance, shifting the focus away from politics and toward his extensive business portfolio in the sports world. Ohanian explained that he had attended the UFC event solely because he received an official invitation from the top leadership of TKO and IMG. He reminded his audience of his massive professional footprint in the industry, noting that he currently owns 5 professional sports teams as well as an entire professional sports league, making his presence at a major athletic event a matter of corporate duty rather than political alignment, in a further effort to distance himself from the toxic remarks made during the evening. Ohanian provided a specific timeline of his movements during the event. He claimed that he was already well on his way home by the time those specific offensive comments were uttered by the fighter, meaning he was not physically present in the room to witness or react to them in real time. He added that he was genuinely glad to see UFC President Dana White publicly condemn the fighter's behavior afterward, suggesting that the organization's leadership also recognized the inappropriate nature of the remarks. To reinforce his lifelong commitment to fighting discrimination, Ohanian pointed his followers toward his highly publicized past actions. Most notably, he highlighted his momentous 2020 resignation from the board of Reddit, the very company he had co-founded in 2005. At the time, he had walked away from his position as a direct protest against the hateful and racist content that had taken root within certain sectors of the platform, demanding that his seat be filled by a black candidate. By recalling this historic move, Ohanian argued that his track record of fighting hate speech spoke much louder than a single evening spent at a sports event. However, despite his detailed explanation and his appeal to his past sacrifices, a massive segment of the public remained entirely unconvinced by his defense. When his tweet was shared and discussed on Reddit, the very platform he helped create, the reaction from the community was overwhelmingly cynical and dismissive. One highly upvoted comment bluntly labeled his explanation a total corporate cop-out, refusing to accept the idea that business obligations trumped moral responsibilities. Another commenter took a broader aim at the elite class as a whole, writing that the entire situation proved that these ultra-wealthy individuals possess an immense amount of money but incredibly little morals when their interests are on the line. The skepticism only deepened as others joined in with sharp sarcasm, with one user noting that it sure seemed like an awful lot of words just to say that he values money and status far more than personal character. Others did not even bother to engage with the specifics of his text, simply responding with a dismissive phrase of "whatever dude," signaling that the trust had been severely broken. The deep divide between Ohanian's perception of his corporate duties and his audience's expectation of his moral leadership created a massive rift, leaving the tech mogul stuck in a difficult position as the public continued to debate whether his explanation was a genuine defense or merely an exercise in corporate damage control. The deep and lasting fracture caused by this single evening underscores a much larger, more complex truth about the nature of influence, accountability, and the heavy price of public leadership in the modern era. When the digital dust began to settle around Alexis Ohanian's appearance at the UFC Freedom 250 event, the conversation shifted from immediate outrage to a broader examination of what it truly means to be a person of immense privilege and platform today. For Ohanian, this moment was not merely an isolated public relations crisis, but a direct challenge to the foundational identity he had built over decades as an internet pioneer, an investor, and a public advocate. His journey from co-founding a simple link-sharing website in 2005 to becoming a major force in global sports ownership has been marked by a continuous effort to align his commercial ventures with a distinct social conscience. When that alignment was perceived to have failed, it forced a massive reevaluation among his peers and his followers alike, highlighting how quickly years of accumulated goodwill can be called into question by a single choice of associations. To fully understand the gravity of why this specific event mattered so deeply to millions of people, one must look closely at the remarkable journey of the heroes involved and the profound societal weight they carry. Alexis Ohanian's life and career completely transformed when he married Serena Williams, one of the most dominant athletes and culturally significant icons in human history. By entering her world, Ohanian did not just become a supportive spouse. He became a frontline witness to the intense, systemic, and often cruel scrutiny that Black women face at the highest echelons of global success. Serena Williams' career was a masterclass in resilience, as she spent more than 2 decades battling not only her opponents on the tennis court, but also a persistent undercurrent of racist and sexist commentary from traditional media, sports analysts, and online trolls. Throughout this journey, Ohanian frequently stepped forward as her most vocal defender, using his tech world influence and his personal platforms to publicly name, shame, and dismantle the biases leveled against his wife and their young daughters. Because Ohanian had voluntarily stepped into this role as an ally and protector, his audience did not view him as a standard, detached venture capitalist. They viewed him as a man who understood the profound human cost of bigotry and who had actively committed his life, his family, and his fortune to standing against it. This is precisely why his presence at the White House gathering felt like such a monumental betrayal to so many. The event was not just a sports match. It was a cultural crucible where the dark, hostile rhetoric that Serena Williams had fought her entire life was casually spoken aloud by an athlete on a grand stage. When UFC fighter Josh Hokit chose to utter a vile slur against former First Lady Michelle Obama, he was utilizing a specific historical playbook designed to demean and dehumanize powerful Black women. For the public watching from home, the fact that Ohanian was anywhere near an organization that platformed such rhetoric, even if he was already on his way out the door, felt like an unacceptable compromise of the very principles that defined his public persona. This controversy also shined as a powerful spotlight on the broader evolution of the organizations involved, particularly the Ultimate Fighting Championship and its corporate parent companies, TKO and IMG. Over the past decade, mixed martial arts has evolved from a niche, often controversial combat sport into a multi-billion-dollar global entertainment powerhouse that commands the attention of major corporate sponsors and traditional media networks. As the sport sought mainstream legitimacy, it aggressively courted elite tech investors, entertainment moguls, and high-profile team owners like Ohanian to build its cultural and financial capital. However, even as its financial status soared, the sport maintained a raw, unfiltered, and deeply combative culture where boundaries are routinely pushed, and where controversial figures are frequently given a massive platform to express extreme viewpoints. This dual nature creates a permanent tension for corporate partners who wish to profit from the sport's massive, highly engaged audience while completely avoiding the toxic behavioral fallouts that regularly occur within its ecosystem. The fierce public debate surrounding Ohanian's defense serves as a stark warning to all modern leaders who attempt to separate professional business decisions from their personal ethical convictions. In his statement, Ohanian pleaded with the public to understand that his attendance was a routine business obligation tied to his ownership of 5 professional sports teams and an entire sports league. He argued that in the high-stakes world of sports entertainment, networking at premier events is an essential function of leadership that allows him to advance his commercial goals. Yet the overwhelming rejection of this explanation by his own community on Reddit and X demonstrates that the public completely rejects the notion of a compartmentalized life. In the modern cultural landscape, consumers and followers demand total moral consistency. They firmly believe that a leader's ethics cannot be paused for a business meeting, and that choosing to sit at a table with those who tolerate bigotry is, in itself, a form of tolerance that cannot be excused by a corporate title. As we look toward the future, the fallout from this event will undoubtedly serve as a defining chapter in Alexis Ohanian's ongoing narrative of public leadership and accountability. It highlights the immense difficulty of navigating a deeply polarized cultural landscape where every action is scrutinized and where a single evening can overshadow years of genuine advocacy, including his historic 2020 resignation from the Reddit board to protest hate speech. The lesson of this story is not that public figures are entirely forbidden from entering diverse or challenging spaces, but rather that they must always remain hyper-aware of the profound symbolic power of their presence. For an audience that has endured systemic bias, symbols matter immensely, and the company a leader chooses to keep will always speak infinitely louder than any statement they release after the fact. Ultimately, this entire episode stands as a powerful testament